Almost 3 months ago, I was diagnosed with a stress fracture, multiple stress fractures actually, and I had to spend quite a bit of time away from running. But in that time, I've learned some new things and also had to relearn some old things. The most important thing that I realize, and something that really should be common sense at this point, is that problems are best dealt with while they're still small problems and not letting them become big problems. It all started on a medium long day. I was almost back home, 2 miles away, and I had this pain that just came up in my hip area that was just strange and didn't feel right, and I had to stop for a second to kind of reorient myself. And I was like, this is weird, this kind of hurts. But I just kept on going home anyway, finished the run, didn't think too much of it. But really, I should have paid more attention to it, because that was kind of the seed of a larger problem. But I kind of just ignored it. And it's something that never really went away. I kept on running over those next couple weeks, and I always had pain. There was always something going on. No run that I did felt really good. Something was always hurting, but I kept going anyway. I wanted to get the training in. I didn't want to sacrifice the mileage that I had planned. So I just kept going until one day, I guess, was just the straw that broke the camel's back, and just horrible, horrible pain, to the point where walking was a struggle. And at that point, I knew I was going to be probably out for a while. If I had been able to stop when the problem was relatively small and dealt with it right then and there, I may have had to take some time off, but maybe not 3 months like I'm currently at right now. But that was not the reality. The reality is I kept pushing, got multiple stress fractures, was hurting so much that I had to take time off work. I had to take 10 weeks completely off of running. And even beyond those 10 weeks, it's going to take a long time just to get back to the training load that I was wanting to do beforehand anyway. All because I didn't want to deal with the problem in that moment. I decided to keep pushing. And the injury was kind of a reality check, on my own ego. That ego is the reason why, I kept going, I think, why I pushed through so much pain. I'd talked to people about this great summer training plan that I was going to have, all these mileage that I was going to do, how good a shape I was going to be in at the end of the summer. I wanted to see my running log all filled up with nice big numbers. I wanted to see that high mileage number on my Garmin at the end of the week. I wanted to go on Strava and see my total mileage and see how high up I was in my club leaderboards. And all that is what kept me going when I really should not have. That's one issue with Strava or anything where you might be sharing what you're doing in a kind of social media type of way. There's a tendency to want to show off how much you're doing and how great your training is going. But the problem is your training might not be going great, and just high mileage in and of itself is not necessarily a proxy of how good your training is going. I knew going into that summer training block that I had problems all spring leading up to that with my ankle and my hip flexor, things that had to cause me to cut my track season a little bit short. I knew that this high volume might cause trouble, because all spring, I had really not run more than 50 miles a week and was kind of hovering more around 40. Just things were hurting and I wasn't able to do what I wanted to do. I knew that if I could do high mileage, then I'd probably see better results. But the thing is, I was not ready for it yet. And the logical part of my brain knew that, jumping from 40 miles a week up to 80, 90, 100, might cause some trouble. But that primal part of my brain, that monkey brain, just wants to show off and see all these big numbers and doesn't want to give up on the plan that I'd set out for myself. Even though when this first bit of pain happened, I knew the type of pain that it was could be like a bone injury or a stress fracture or reaction. I just didn't care. That part of my brain just wanted to keep going and showing off and like have this great summer training block. If I'd been smarter, I would have gone more gradually, or like trying to like replace some easy days with cross training days, just lighten the load a little bit. But I didn't do any of that. I just kept on pushing because that monkey brain wants to see all these like good results and doesn't care about anything else, can't think long term. It's just all ego. Like in these kinds of situations, you have to try your best to be and think outside of yourself. Like if you were an athlete that you were coaching, how would you talk to them? Like how would you get this person that you're helping to have the best like long-term results? And the solution in the short term might not be what they want to hear. And when you're helping someone else out with that, you can be more objective about it. But when you're kind of on your own with it, it's a little bit tougher to do. And it's a lot easier to double down on some bad decisions like I did. Like I should not have tried to jump up to that much volume so quickly. That was probably the crux of my problem. Like I said, I'd only been going 40 or so miles a week and still having problems with that. So I'd take 2 weeks off in April and come back. And the first week of the block was only 17 miles, so not that much. But by week 5, I was already pushing 60 miles a week. And by week 10, I was over 100. I've talked about increasing mileage before on this channel, and how if you've run like a certain volume before, it's easier to jump into that again. You don't have to like be as gradual about it. And I think that is true to an extent in certain situations. But the problem with my scenario was like I had been running like 40, 50 miles a week for a good amount of time, and I'm jumping all the way up to 100. And yes, I have done 100-mile weeks before. I've had extended blocks of running like 80, 90, 100s. But the thing is, those blocks were like years ago. Like they were not recent, like that was not part of my recent training history. Like I did a 100-mile week as like a one-off at a camp last year, but that's totally different from like consistent like 100-mile weeks, like week after week after week, that my body was getting used to. And my body was used to 40, 50, 60, not the 100, even though I had done that in the past. It was too far in the past. It was not really relevant anymore to what I was currently doing. And like, I think the principle still applies. Like if you were coming out of a track season and running a certain volume, and track season's over and you take like a 2-3 weeks like off or like down weeks, and then come back for cross country like a month later, like at that point you can jump back into your like track season mileage before too long. It's not that big of a deal. But in my case, it had been, like I said, 4 or 5 years since I'd run the volume that I was jumping straight into again after not having done it for so long. So that was a big problem for me. And like I wanted to put an emphasis on volume, and it's something that I felt like I had been lacking, especially like over the past few months. And like I think running higher than I would have been good for me, because 40 or 50 for me is not that much. Like I believed I was capable of doing more, but I don't think that much more was healthy, obviously. I wanted this like crazy high volume. That's what I thought it took to be running fast. But the thing is, like, if you're trying to do that and then you get hurt and you can't run at all, like that's not doing you any good. Like lower volume training isn't necessarily always ideal, but it's better than not running at all, which is where I've been stuck for like a long time now. What I have been able to do is cross training, which is something that I've again talked about and dabbled with a little bit before, but like this injury cycle was like so long and I was hurt like so much that like I was having to dive like deep into it. This time around I also went like fully into like other sports themselves. Like I looked at cycling and swimming. I was listening to like podcasts from like triathletes and cyclists and swimmers just to kind of get a glimpse into that world and see how it works, see if I could learn anything that I could apply within cross training, but also things that I could maybe learn from and apply once I did get back into running. Well, I think the first thing that's important to realize for cross training with runners is a lot of times the best form of cross training is just the one that you're going to stick to. And for me, I knew that like outdoor cycling was going to be a big one. Like I could not stand the idea of just pedaling away on a stationary bike, like in a gym somewhere. And then like outdoor swimming, it's just nice being in the water. It's Phoenix here, so it's like 105 degrees. So you can get in the pool, get some outdoor training in, but it's not like stupid hot out, which is nice. So I knew those two were going to be the ones that I would be able to stick to the most. And some things I learned on the cycling side, like volume is even more king on the cycling side than it is for running. If there's no impact with the ground, your range of motion is limited to like just what the pedals of the bike are doing. So outside of just crashing your bike or getting hit by a car, like the injury risk is pretty low. So because of that, pro cyclists are going to be doing way more volume than pro runners are doing. Like a pro runner might max out at like 15 hours per week, but like cyclists will be going for like 20 or 30 plus hours every week. You know, basically double the time that like a serious like high volume elite runner's got to be doing. And my schedule was like a little tough to work around with like coaching, like practice in the morning and like going to work. So I was just squeezing things in when I can, like get a little ride in the morning, get a little ride in the afternoon, going 2 times a day. Like I didn't have time to do these like 2-hour rides every morning, but I did make sure like at least once a week to get something longer, usually at least 25 miles. There's a couple of days where I rode around 40 miles, and there's one day where I had wanted to do it for a long time, and I finally finished a 100-mile ride. It took a lot of attempts with flat tires, but I finally got there. And that's just like a whole different experience. Like on the running side, I've not gone more than like 3.5 hours. But like this 100-mile ride, the riding time was 6.5 hours. The total time was a little over 7, just with stops and stuff. And it's a little bit different perspective, just being out for that long, like doing aerobic activity for that long. It's something that your pace that you're riding at isn't like very hard in and of itself, but you add that up over so long, like you get very tired. You know, it made me respect like the guys doing the Tour de France, like being out there every day for so long, and like people doing the Ironman, like it's a 112-mile ride for a full Ironman. Like there's no way I was gonna go another 12 miles and like be able to run a marathon after. Like, my legs are just shot. So a little more respect for those guys and girls doing that like super long stuff. One thing that I learned, like took away from both biking and swimming, is because of the nature of it being non-impact, is you can be a lot more heavy with interval training. You know, I talk about, you know, running like VO2 max work. Like if you overdo that, like you're really gonna beat yourself up. But like cycling, it's not uncommon to see like a VO2 max like type workout like multiple times per week, like fairly regularly all throughout the year. Like I was looking at one like triathlon training plan. There's 2 VO2 max workouts on the bike every week. Just riding really hard for pretty short intervals and like equal rest time. So if you tried that running, you would just be smoked. And then on the swimming side, basically every like session you're doing is all intervals. That's, from what I understand, like if you go to a swimming practice, that's what it's going to be. Like there's not really people going just swimming laps back and forth for an hour straight nonstop. It's usually like broken up into intervals, going faster, doing things, working on technique and stuff. It's not just going and going and going like you would on a running or on a bike. But one thing that kind of differentiates swimming from cycling and running is like the reliance on technique. The aerobic engine still plays a role, but moving through water is many times more dense than air. So anything that you're doing that's gonna like cause extra drag or cause inefficiencies is gonna really be magnified in the water. And there's a good amount of coordination, like you're using your whole body. And I was pretty bad at the start, just kind of flopping around like a fish and going super slow. But through watching some videos and like kind of seeing how to do things, I slowly got faster and more efficient, just got really comfortable doing it. And it did get me thinking about, like, on the running side of things, that like maybe we could get some benefits out of like improving our technique and efficiency. And I've been a pretty big proponent of that, but just kind of swimming kind of reinforces the importance of that. Like on the running side, if you think, especially over a long distance, like 10K plus, like if you can just keep your same stride rate, but just move like, I don't know, like half an inch further with each step, generating that much more power, being able to be that much more efficient, like that can add up over the course of a long race. Just these little differences, just being able to be that little bit more efficient, I think could help people out. And another thing I'd kind of discovered with both biking and swimming is, like, compared to running, you kind of gotta get moving pretty good to get that heart rate up, like because of the fact that it's non-impact. Like I remember my first time on a bike thinking like, okay, I'll just try to like ballpark get my heart rate around like 140 on my Garmin, and I just kept riding faster and faster and faster, and it was like, why am I not able to do this? So you got to ride like decently quick or swim decently quick to be able to get up to that like heart rate, try to get that same aerobic stimulus out of that training session. Like if you're just splish splashing around in the pool or just kind of doing like a leisurely bike ride, like you're probably not getting much of the benefits that you could be getting if you're like actually at the proper intensity. I did have the advantage of being down here in Phoenix, where it's 105 plus degrees every day. So getting the heart rate up on the bike was a little bit easier, especially as you get more tired. Like that 100-mile ride was like quite the stimulus, I think. Like 6+ hours of riding at like 140, 150 beats per minute. Like I'd never done anything like that before. On like getting that heart rate up, like just for some perspective, like most of my bike rides were like 15 to 16 miles per hour on like an older mountain bike, which the 100-mile ride was on against my better judgment. But yeah, like it's not like slow riding around. Like I got a chance a couple times to ride on a road bike. I was averaging like 18, 19 miles per hour most of the time. So not going slow. Like you got to get moving pretty quick, pretty good intensity on your cross training to just match the heart rate that you would get on an easy run. So that's something to keep in mind if you are like having to cross train, because like, the aerobic benefit is like the advantage of cross training. Like you're not getting like a one-to-one like substitute for like the muscle activation and the neuromuscular component. It's just working that aerobic system. Like on that time off, if you're not running like that neuromuscular system and like the muscle fiber recruitment, all that stuff kind of takes a back seat. It's not really being used as much. And like if you come back running, you can definitely feel that. My first run back was on an Ultra G at 50% body weight, so it wasn't as much of a shock. But the first time I did actually run on the ground again, it was just one lap around the track at like 9-minute mile pace. And I like 50 meters in, I was like, my legs feel very heavy, very uncoordinated. It feels like these muscles have not worked for a long time. So that's something that's going to be missing if you take some time off like that. And you're just going to have to be mindful of not killing yourself when you do get back into it. You take for granted how light and easy running can feel like when you're like in the midst of it. Like, yeah, if you've had a long injury like me, like you can get back there, but it just takes a little bit of time and a little bit of patience. And like coming back from like a stress reaction type injury, like I'm learning like it's important to be cautious. You know, I've had injuries in the past before. Like I had a stress reaction back in college. It happened in January. I was cleared to run again by March, and I was still wanting to run like outdoor track. So I just jumped into like practices like immediately, running like 10 miles and getting totally gassed, and my whole system was just fried, and like trying to work out, and then jumping into races and running like a 1500, like 25 seconds slower than I did last year, but it still hurts like crazy. Like it wasn't fun, and I could only withstand a month of that before things started to flare up again, and I had to just call it quits on the season. So like I said, the injury happened in January, cleared to go again in March. By mid-April, I was giving up on track, and it took until August or September before I was really good to go again after finally getting some like professional help with it. So this time around, not making that mistake. I'm like going to physical therapy. You know, I'm taking things, you know, per their recommendations very, very slowly. Like the only like running that I'm like prescribed to do is like, every other day. It's 1 minute on, 1 minute off. You're just jogging and then walking. So very, very little, but I think it's worth it to kind of go through that now to not have to deal with more injury problems later. You know, as I'm getting back into it, like I'm not going to just be jumping into things, whether that's like volume or speed work, weight room stuff, drills, anything like that. I'm realizing the importance of kind of going one step at a time, taking logical like next steps, like progressively overloading, not doing too much all at once, because I've been on the other end of that, and it's not fun. It just drags the process out way longer than it needs to be. So even though it's not good in the short term, I believe long term that it's going to be the better way to do things. But I think a big thing when I do get back also is just going to be learning to enjoy running as much as I can. When you're in like a deep like training block and you're tired and sore, your legs hurt, you don't feel like going out, like it's good to remind yourself that it's good just to be able to do this at all. Because when you're not able to do something, you realize how much you like miss it and actually enjoyed it while you were doing it. I'm gonna work to remind myself of that, and then work on preserving it, working more on like mobility, stability, like weight room, strength work type of stuff. Just trying to like preserve what I have, don't take it for granted, because I've learned like how much I enjoyed it and how much I've been missing it over the past 3 months. If you're healthy and things are going good, like appreciate it and don't do anything stupid that's gonna potentially jeopardize that. So I hope my story here is able to provide some good advice, maybe good warning for some people on what not to do. A smart person learns from their mistakes. A smarter person learns from other people's mistakes. So here's to hoping that you can be smarter than I was.